you can see there is a databases options. Okay, just let's open this databases. Now under this databases on left hand side, we have a different options like HANA Cloud, HANA Native, then Postgres SQL, then for Java it is H2, and then there is SQlite. Okay, so we will select this SQlite as of now. And now this SQlite configuration we want to do in our project. Okay, so for doing it, first of all, you see we have to run this command npm add cap.js SQlite. So already this cap.js SQlite is present in our package.json, correct? Cap.js SQlite is already present. Now what is next step here? So this is some basic configuration. If you want to maintain in an environment variable, it's just local work, okay? But that we don't want to do. We will just scroll down a little bit. Now we want to create one database file. So for creating a database file and the name that you want to provide, so for this, you can add this configuration in your package.json file. You can see there is a configuration which is given, especially which you can add in your package.json file. So this configuration I'm going to add. So already there is a CDS keyword or not. You can just copy this configuration directly from here. Okay, so till here I'm going to copy and then I will directly comma and then I will paste it. Okay, so this is the configuration which I have added. And in this, if you see, it requires the DB and the type of DB is SQLite. And currently this DB is the DB file. If you see the URL of DB file is db.sqlite. But currently this db.sqlite is not created as of now. Okay, but for future use, like when we deploy the changes, so it's going to create this DB file. Okay, it will create a DB file and the DB file name will be db.sqlite. So this file will be created. So we have added the configuration now. This is the configuration which will work for the SQlite database. So like we can also add for HANA Cloud. If you are working for a HANA Cloud database, so the configuration will remain same, only the kind will change. And definitely when you're working on a HANA Cloud, the credentials will change for that. Okay, so I have added the configuration for the SQlite now. Now I want to push all the code changes to my database. Okay, so I'll show you how it is done. So you can open your project first of all. Okay, this is my project. Already it is opened in a terminal. You can see this is the path. And I will just run a command cds build. And once the cds build is done, I will do cds deploy. Okay, so if after running the cds deploy, what it is going to do, it's going to create db.sqlite file. Can you see the db.sqlite file is created, guys, here? So this is your DB file now. So, okay. So when you have a physical DB file here within your project, this we call it as a persistence. So this will be your persistent database. And this, like whenever you do any code changes, especially on a data model level, like when you change anything in a schema.cds file, if you're changing the structure or if you're adding a new entity or in service definition, if you're adding a new definition, so whatever you do on service and on database level, always we have to run a command cds build and cds deploy. So these two commands we always have to do. So once you do the cds build and cds deploy, so this changes will be deployed on your db.sqlite file. Okay, now I'll show you how to connect with this db.sqlite file. So this is the database file. Okay, so currently there is nothing, means you cannot directly open that. So we have to connect this db.sqlite with one option is there in our VS. You can just click on three dots and you see there is an option here, SQL tools. Okay, so we will use this SQL tools extension in our SAP BS. And there is an option here to add a new connection. So I'm just going to click here, add a new connection. Okay, so just click on add new connection. Now you see the SQLite, it's for node. Just select this. Now connection name, I'll say just it is a customer DB. Okay, that's the connection name. Now a database file. So where is the database file located as of now? Database file, you see, it is located inside customer app, correct? So you can right click on this db.sqlite file and you can just choose the option copy path. Just right click on the database, the db.sqlite file and just choose option copy path. So once the path is copied, you can just paste that in your database file. Okay. So just we have to paste the path of database file and then you can just click on test connection. So if it says successfully connected, then you can save the connection. Okay. Just click on save connection now. Now you see this is the basic configuration of the database. Okay. And it's already connected now. And now you can just click on connect now. So once it is connected, so now whatever the changes that you do, you can easily run the SQL also from here. Okay. If any query that you want to run, you can easily run from here. So I will close this, sorry, cancel. Now I will go here in SQL tools. So in SQL tools, if I expand, so under this tables, can you see the tables here, guys? I think this was the question asked by Ravi yesterday. So like where we can see the database table locally. So these are the database tables which you can see. And if you expand, you can see the fields also. And now if you want to check the data also into this, right click on the customer and select the option show table records. Okay, you can just select the customers and you can see this is the table records. Correct? All the records are available now here. Okay, guys, it's clear now how to connect your project with SQLite with a persistent database, how the project, the database file will be created, and then how you can build and how you can deploy your project with your db.sqlite. The steps are clear now. So why we connected with db.sqlite, a persistent database, means if you are working on any data spatially, okay? So for example, I have created a couple of records. So a couple of records when I have created. So when we reload this app, automatically the changes are gone. The records which I have created that are gone, correct? That's what generally happens. When I reload, so automatically till that session, the records which I have created, it is gone. But when you connect with a persistent database, that records will be stored in this DB file. Okay, that records will be stored in a DB file. But if you run a command cds build and cds deploy after making a changes in your DB, in your schema, then automatically the changes will be gone. Okay, the changes means which changes? The data changes. The data that you have newly created or added into this DB, that data will be deleted when you do cds build and cds deploy. Okay, but till that period, it will be there. Like I'll show you one thing now. So I'm just going to create one basic. I'll show you. Wait. I'll run a command cds watch first. Okay, so currently my project is running and we have created one HTTP file, correct? So if I scroll down a little bit, I'll just do the post call. Okay, this is the post call for the customers. If I click on send request, okay, you see the record is created now. Okay, now you can see this is our data, existing data. Now what we have to do, we just have to go here and you can just reload it. Okay, let me close this once. Yeah, can you see now, guys, here? One more record can you see in our table here now? Database, which is newly added just now, correct? So this data, it will be stored in your SQL. Okay, but if I stop now, like for example, wait, just close it. Yeah. Now, if I do CDS, like if I stop this project execution, like with this, okay. Now, if I, wait, I can just close and I can just right click and show table records. Still the data will be stored. Okay. If your project is stopped, still the data is stored. Again, if you run CDS watch, there is no problem. You can still perform your request. You can send a request and again the new record will be created. So again, if you want to check that changes in your database, show table records. Once again, you will see one more record now, which is created. See, correct? All the records will be stored. But if I run a command CDS build and CDS watch, sorry, CDS build and CDS deploy, like I have done couple of changes, and then when I redeploy my database, then at that time the changes will be gone. Okay, I'll show you how. Like you can do CDS build and CDS deploy. So when you redeploy your database again, then at that time the changes will be gone. If you right click, show table records. Now can you see only 3 records are available, correct? In a previous session, so how many records were there? 5 records. But now when I do CDS build and CDS deploy, if I redeploy my database again after the changes, then again the records which are created during that session, that will be gone. And that will only happen if you redeploy your database. That only for the local, okay? It's not for the HANA cloud. It's in a real-time projects, never your data is going to lose if you redeploy your database, especially. Okay, so far it's clear, guys.
Yes, Alex. So this is like storing data at application layer. It's not like in a real database table, isn't it?
Yes. It will like a real and as a best practice, what CAP says, what SAP is saying, like if you're working on a CAP for a look, I mean, when you're doing a development, during development, make sure that you use SQlLite for your local development, only for the testing, because it's giving you the like a real-time feel only, right? Like you're working on a real-time database. That kind of feel you're getting, and you're getting all the things properly here, so that you can recheck, you can run a query, everything you can do. And once everything is good, then you deploy your application on a for a productive base for a HANA cloud. So for production based deployment, definitely we will use HANA Cloud only, not the SQlite.
Once we feel comfortable, then we are going to deploy it to the HANA DB level.
Yes, correct. Because every time we will not do like small change once we did, and again we have to redeploy HANA Cloud. Then we will check the change. It's not a good idea. Let's complete our development initially locally on our BS using SQlite database. Once everything is running, then you deploy it on a HANA Cloud directly.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
Fine. So any questions, guys, here? I think that's about the connecting your project with the local database SQLite, and then how you can connect your project with Git repository that we have seen so far. Okay. Now let's talk about the handlers now. So currently in CAP, like see, when you build a OData service in CAP, you can perform all the CRUD queue operation from the scratch, correct? You can do send request, like you can do post call, you can do get call, you can do patch, put, or delete any type of CRUD operation you can perform on a default OData service, which is being developed in CAP. Okay, so you don't have to write any extra code to perform the CRUD queue operation on a CAP service, because you're getting that as a ready-made feature from a CAP. But there might be case that this standard features is not going to help you for a certain scenario or for certain requirements. Okay, so let's say we want to validate email address. So in CAPM, like when you're creating a record, maximum what type of validations you can add. If you're adding mandatory, then it will just check for the value, if value is empty or not. But how you will check for a certain condition, if whether the email address is valid or not, whether the email address which user is typing, it's already present or not in our database. How you will check all these things? Whether we want to check the phone number also, whether the phone number is already used or not in existing database, it's there or not in our existing database, how we can check that. So for such cases, in CAPM, we have a generic handlers. So CAPM is providing you the provision where you can write your Node.js code and using some handlers, and on runtime, you can check the data, you can check the values, and you can put a validations on top of it. So CAPM is providing you with a set of certain handlers. Okay, we call it as a generic handlers, and there are some certain service providers. So this service provider concept we will use in our CAP to implement some business logic. So for writing our own business logic, especially in Node.js or in Java, so CAPM provides some generic handlers, and those generic handlers we will use to implement a custom logic on top of it. Okay. So first, I will explain you how you can validate an email address. Okay, like we got a requirement that whatever the user is typing, especially the email address, whether the email address is correct or not, how you will validate. So that we will understand first on runtime using the handlers, and then I'll show you what type of handlers we can add, like how many handlers are there, and then what is custom action, how you can create your own custom action, and how you can fire that event. So that we will discuss now. Okay, so a lot of new things are there in CAP, but for this, like when you're working with a custom handlers, events, the business logic for this, your Node.js skill should be good. Like you should know at least the most of the Node.js code. If you know the process of async, await, then promises, working with promises, your JavaScript knowledge, if everything is good, you already know the core concepts of JavaScript and Node.js, then you can easily write a code in a custom handler. Because in custom handler, most of the code that you will see, it's pure Node.js and JavaScript code only. Some developers are using ES5 syntax, some are using ES6 syntax, but the same syntax you will see in your JS files. So we will be creating a JS file in our CAP, and I'll show you how it is done. Okay. So any questions, guys? Any questions? Okay. So to work with the custom handlers, especially with the custom handlers, for example, we want to validate email address. First, we will do the validation of email address or phone number, anything we can pick. I'll show you how it is done. And then based on that, like how the response can be returned to the user if, let's say, email address or phone number is invalid. So we want to give error also on runtime. So the specific email address is not valid. So you can give such type of response when you're doing a patch call or update call or create call. So during this, but how that events, how that handlers are registered, that we will understand. Okay. But to work with the custom development, definitely it's done using a JavaScript files. So now in our SAP CAP, especially in our SAP CAP, when you want to work with the service handlers, especially with the services, you see we have cds.services here. Okay. So under the cds.service, we have an application service here. Okay. And under this application service, like we have a plenty of options. So currently we have exposed our service in this format, right? We have exposed our service. Now on top of this service, I want to add my custom logic. I want to add my custom logic. So for that, which class we will use? For that, the class that CAPM provide is cds.application-service. So cds.application-service is a default service provider implementation. So it's a default provider for the service implementation in which we can add generic handlers. So generic handlers, your Node.js code, your Express code, everything we will do it inside this class. Okay. So it's a default class which is going to help us for providing the implementation, for providing the service implementation. So they have given some code also. You can see this code we have to use. What code we have to use? CDS. First, we have to import the library SAP/CDS, and then we have to define a class admin or whatever, like your service class, and then it will be extended from cds.application service. So you're creating one subclass from the main class cds.application service. And then inside this application service, if you see, there is an init method. Okay, so again, this is the default lifecycle method in which we will register our event handlers. Okay, so event handlers are registered inside, and this is the standard code, guys. Okay, I'm not writing anything here. So whatever you see, it is completely standard, and this structure we have to follow whenever you want to write a service implementation. Okay, if you want to provide your service implementation, so we have to follow the syntax, and this is the new concept they have introduced. Okay, so I'll show you how it is done. So you can just go back. Now, whenever you're creating your handlers, especially your handlers, so your handlers file will be created inside SRB folder. Okay, inside SRB folder, already there is service.cds file is created, correct? So we have to create a handler file with the same file name, but only the extension will change. If I have created service.cds, then you will create service.js. So file name must match with the data mod with the service file name. Okay, so both the files name, the name should be same, only the extension will change. So automatically on runtime, the CAP will know that the service implementation for this data model is this JS file. So automatically the CAP will understand. We have to make sure when you're providing a service handler, make sure that service handler file name is exactly similar to your CDS file. And we have to place exactly after the service.cds file. Okay, so how it is done? So let's right click on this SRB, and you can just create service.js. Okay, so this is the approach that we will follow. If your file name is myservice.cds, then you will create a JS handler with myservice.js. So make sure your file name should be same, only the extension will change. Okay, now what is the next step inside this service.js? I'm going to create a, I'm going to import the SAP/CDS library. So for that, I will write const CDS equal to require. Then I will load @SAP/CDS. Then what I have to write after this, I will write here class. Then my service, what is the service name? Service name is customer service. Extends from, I think directly it's there, right? Extends CDS dot application service. Okay. And now inside CDS dot application service, we have init method. And inside init, we will register the event handlers. We will register the handlers. Now handlers, there are different handlers, which I can show you now. So when you're working with the handlers, right? So for example, you can see, you can register your handler with this dot before, this dot after, this dot on. Now this dot before means like before read call is triggered. So you can even define like on which event this will, this event is going to fire. Like for example, I want to create a record. Okay, you want to create a record, but before the record is created, I will receive the data. And which method I will use for that? This dot before. I will use this dot before for that, and I will pass create as a HTTP method inside this handler. And on which entity the post operation is happened? It has happened on, for example, books. So I will provide here books. So I'm trying to create a record, and for that I have used customer. So customer is the entity which I'm going to pass, and which operation I have performed on a customer post. So I'm going to provide here create. Okay, so I'm going to use a create here, create method. So, and this create method, so this whatever you define in this dot before and whatever you write here, this is going to fire. This is going to trigger based on the type of event that you have defined and the type of entity that you have defined. Okay, let me show you with a simple example how this works. But this will be confusing at initial level, but it requires a practice, guys, because this is pure Node.js code and this is all standard. Whatever you see, we have to remember all these methods and we have to react based on like type of requirement we have. So certain situation, like if I want to add a logic before create or after create or during create, so these methods are going to help you for that. Okay. And these are generic handlers or event handlers, which we say. So one more step, we at the last we have to write module.export and then we have to write customer service. Okay. So once it is done, you see here, at last we have to write this module.exports and then we have to write the service name. Okay. So this is the important step here. So basic configuration, and at last within this init, you see there is one more keyword is there, return super.init. Okay, we have to write this super.init. So again, this is standard. We have to follow this structure, guys. So whatever the handlers we have written, and this handlers we have to override. Like this has to work. So for that we have written super.init. Okay, so this is just going to override, and this handler is going to be registered in your subclass, that is customer service. Okay, now the first thing which I'm going to write here is, now you see we have done a post call here, right? So when you call a post, so this record will be passed, right? Now, what I want to do, I want to validate the phone number. For example, I want to do the validation of phone number. And for that, first I have to trigger an event. Okay, I have to capture this post call. When this post call will happen and how I can validate this data before the record is created in database. I don't want that record to be created in database. Before that, I want to do a validation on a phone number. Once the validation is done on a phone number, if the phone number is valid, then I will simply create a record. I will not do anything. But if phone number is invalid, then I'm just going to throw the error. So and so that phone number is invalid. Okay, so that type of error I'm going to throw. So for this, how the code is written, let's understand that. So first of all, I'll just go back in the service and I'll write here this dot before, because I want that the functionality or this code to execute before the record is created. So definitely I will handle it with this dot before handler. And after that, so this, see, the phone number will be passed in two cases. In which all cases the phone number will be passed, guys? In which all cases the phone number will be passed? It's very simple answer. So during create, like when I want to create a new record, create an update. Correct. So we will write here create in capital, give comma, and then again I will pass here update. Okay. So during create and update, I want to handle this condition. And now on which entity I want to handle? On customers entity, because I will do the post call. I will do the post call on customers. Correct. So customers entity I have to pass. So how I will pass in service.js? So within our init, if you want to get an entity specific information, so for that we will create one variable with const, and I will write here in curly bracket customers, and then the customer specific information I'll get it from this dot entities. So again, this is the standard keyword entities, this dot entities. So this application service is going to provide the entity specific information. And from this entities, like multiple entities I will receive, but from that I just need customers. So when I specify in curly bracket the customers, automatically the customers entity information will be filled in this customers variable. Okay, automatically. So that's why the curly brackets are used here. Okay. So now this customers data I will receive, and this customers entity details I will pass in this handlers. I will write customers. And then once the handler is called, so there will be a function a callback function, and that function is going to trigger when this event will happen, like whether it will be create an update. Okay, and which function you want to call. So let's say I will call a function this dot validate phone number. So this is the function which I want to call if the create an update happens. Okay, so I'll copy this function name, and after this init, I will paste here, and I will receive from this validate phone number, I will receive request and response. Okay, so generally in create an update, we receive the request and response, and on that we can interact. So now when I receive the request, definitely I need to validate the phone number, correct? So I will write here const, and then inside this I will write the field name. So what is the exact field name that will be passed for the phone number? What is the field name? It's a phone, right? So the same field I will use in our service.js. I will pass here phone. And this data I will receive in rec.data. So from this request, there will be one parameter called data, and this data, within this data, I will receive the phone number. Okay, so I'm not writing rec.data.phone like this. Okay, instead of that, I'm just writing rec.data, and when I pass phone here, automatically from this data, the phone number will be picked. So that's why I kept the same name like a field name. Okay, I'll show you. We will debug this code and I'll show you. Okay. So, okay, fine. This is the basic code. Now let's add a debugger and let me show you whether this function is going to trigger or not. So we will click here, add a breakpoint. And now I think yesterday we have created a run configuration for the customer app. Okay. So already it is created, but if you don't know how to create a run configuration, why I'm going to create a run configuration? Because I can easily debug the code. So for debugging this code, I need a run configuration. Okay. So I have already created, but let me show you one more time. Just click this three dots and select this run configuration. You can see the run configuration is already created for a customer app. I will delete this configuration as of now. So one more time we will create. So currently when you open a run configuration, so it will be blank and it will say no configuration found. So we will click here, create configuration. And now within this, we will select the project, like for which project you want to create a configuration. I want to create a configuration for a customer app. I'll select that. And then it's giving you the name for the configuration, enter. That's it. So once the configuration is created, this is the basic structure that you will see. Okay, guys, this is the basic structure that you will see. And I want that my configuration to be connected with the database. Okay, the database which I'm using. So I'll click here, bind. Okay, so that's it. Now the database is connected. You can see the database connected now properly. So database is connected with this. Now
So
the next step, what?
This run configuration is to run for the specific application project, isn't it?
Yes, yes, for a specific project. If there are 10 projects, then 10 times we have to create this run configuration.
Oh, okay. How about that right side corner, that green button, green arrow? What is about that? On
this one, right?
Not that one. Other side, there is other corner. Yeah. What is that?
This one, right? On top.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
So
Correct.
this is going to help you to run the project. Means if, for example, if I have one project in my BS and I have created a run configuration. So this green button is going to help you to run this app directly. So this green color button you see, run application, this is the same button that we have on the top. So this is just a shortcut for that. Okay. So if you click here, so it's going to run your customer app in a debug mode.
If you don't have a run configuration, then on the right side top, the green button won't work, is it?
Yes, it will not work, correct. So we generally, like for debugging, if you want to debug your code, so we generally use run configuration and we use this option for that, so that you can debug the code on runtime in BS. Okay. So generally for like this, you can do it for your CAP, especially for CAP, it is very useful. But in our UI5 or in Fiori project, we do the debugging on a console itself within a browser. We don't do that in our SAP BS. We uh, we generally debug our code on a browser. Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah. So now as the run configuration is created, now you can see there is a run and debug option here to run a project, or you can just click this green icon. This will open your project in run and debug mode. Okay, you see here, automatically the debug console is started and now it is running your application. And you can see the toggle buttons here on the top. I will just drag and I'll drop on the top so that we can see it properly. Okay. Now this toggle button that you see, it is going to help you to pause your debugger. It's going to help you to execute step by step. It's going to help you to jump into specific function. It's going to help you to restart your application. Like you can restart or reload your application with the help of this. And then if you want to stop this run and debug, for that stop button is there. Okay, all these options are there. Now currently, when you see in your footer, mostly in footer, you can see the orange color, right? So this orange color showcases that your application is running in run and debug mode. Okay, so if I stop, for example, if I stop, automatically this color will be changed. Now, can you see the orange color here in the footer? No, it's not there. So what it means, your run and debug mode is not active. So again, if I want to run, again, I click here directly on green button. As I have selected the customer project by default, so this green button will know. So currently the run configuration is only for the customer app, and recently it is run, so directly it will run the customer app. Okay, but if there are couple of projects, then it's going to give you the option to select like which project you want to run. Okay, so now the run and debug mode is active, and these are the toggle buttons. Okay, fine. So I have kept a breakpoint here in this function, validate phone number. And now I will go back to service.http. So inside the service.http, guys, I'm going to fire this request. Okay, and I'm going to pass this payload, existing payload that we have. Okay, just to show you whether this is working or not, whether I can debug my code or not, that I want to show you. So make sure in your run and debug, this is the URL, localhost 4004. And your URL should match here because sometimes the port number generally change. So we have to be like, make sure the in run and debug, the localhost and the port number that we have, same port number we have to use here. Okay, and it's the same. So now if I click here, send request, now let's see if it's going to pause our debugger or not. Okay, so we already kept a breakpoint on line number 12 inside validate phone number. And we have attached the event handler based on create and update event. Okay, so whenever the create is going to happen, so this dot before will be called. Now, when I click here, send request, you see, I got a breakpoint here. Can you see now, guys? My debugger is paused on line number 12. Okay, it's waiting now. Now, either you can use these options to execute one line at a time. But now currently I want to check like what I have received from the UI. Like for example, from a UI, if you're sending a payload request or if you're passing customer data from the front end. So what I have received from the front end, that you can get it from the request, the first parameter. Okay, so if you hover on this request, you see all these details are part of request. And from this request, there will be a parameter called as data. Can you see this data here, guys? So if you expand this data, can you see all the data that I have passed from the front end? Is this correct? Is this correct, guys?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's why I have written REQ, which is request dot data. So when I execute this line, so it's going to store the phone number. So if you hover on this phone, you will only get a phone number. Correct? This is what the phone number we have passed right from the front end. Is this correct? So at least so far how we have added the handler and how to call that handler. So far it's clear, guys.
Yes,
It's clear.
Abhik.
Yeah.
So I have one question. Few syntaxes I am not very clear. You used const, right? What is exactly the const is? And
Okay, why I have used const? Because definitely I'm not going to change the value of phone number, right? I can use variable also, there is no problem. But currently I'm not going to change any value of phone number. So that's why I just simply went with const. You can also use var. There is no problem at all. Okay, unless if you don't want to change, there will be no problem if you go with const or if you go with var or len. Still everything is fine. Okay.
yeah, and you use this dot validate phone number. That is can be any variable, anything, right? We can write whatever we want.
So this, yes, this is referring to your customer class as of now. It is referring to the current class, which is their customer service. Okay, and from this customer service, if you want to get an entity specific information, so we have this entities. Like if I execute, like if you want to check the details of any other thing, so currently if I execute this dot entities, okay, you can see, sorry, you can write also in this. Okay, if I execute this dot entities, I will get a lot of things into this. See, I'm getting customers entity information, customers.text information, then orders and orders.text. All the entities information, I will get it from this dot entities. And from that, I just require customers. So that's why I just use customers in curly brackets.
So this will go from the right side to left side in general.
Correct. Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Thanks.
Especially if you are using this curly brackets. Means and this is how we store the values also, right? Like if any values, if you want to store, you just specify the value, that value will be stored on left hand side only, right? In the